Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us in this next video of ours, where we usually deal with issues related to psychological well-being, quality of life, and strategies and attitudes that can enhance our health and thus diminish the chances of illness, disease, or the unnecessary suffering. Today we're going to talk about a very known, a very talked about legend, which is not actually a legend, it's a poem by Ovid, by Virgil, the Aeneid. And here we have a very interesting, a very plungent description of what was the Battle of Troy. We are all very used to the idea of the Trojan horse, and it always brings us an idea of something that is on the outside seems harmless, yet it carries in a danger within. And since we have been here talking, and the other name we had for this series of videos would be Talks with Who Likes to Practice Mindfulness. But then we thought it would be a little bit restrictive, because it's not only about mindfulness, and mindfulness is not only about meditation. So we decided to make a more broad understanding of matters. And today you might be asking me, but what does the Trojan horse and the Battle of Troy have to do with issues about psychological well-being and quality of life? We'll get to that. We'll get to it. The poem starts, the description is on book 2. And here's once again the book, the Aeneid. But this is an old edition. You have more modern ones and you have more recent translations too. But in this one here on page 35, we have beginning of book 2. And book 2 talks about specifically the arrival of the famous Trojan horse, which was not Trojan actually. It was a Greek contraption. And then Aeneas takes the word. Aeneas, I'm not sure. We say in Portuguese, we say Aeneas. And in Greek, it's Aeneas. I think it's Aeneas in English. Anyway, he takes the word and he starts telling the queen. He says, he starts explaining, telling the story of the statue of this huge horse which was left at the doors of the city as some sort of gift, whatever, just left there with no annotations, with no, not a little card, nothing explaining what it was about. And then he said that this was a horse. It was a horse as big, as high as a hill, and it was made of planks of pine wood, and it concealed in its belly a small army. And not only a small army, but a small army of extremely skilled warriors. The whole dilemma comes in when people discover the horse, and then the Trojans are asking themselves, what do we do with this thing, this object? In Portuguese, we have an expression which is tranqueira. It's just a piece of junk. It's something that you have no place to put, and you don't know exactly what it is good for, what it could be useful. And they start considering their idea. They start talking, going through the idea. Is this a religious object that the Greeks left? Because the Greeks went away. They left and put this small coastal structure, which was Troy. They left it as if it were a roadstead. And they just left it there and went away. And the Trojans said, what the? The other day we were worrying, now these guys simply go away and leave this thing, huge, enormous, probably ugly. I think it was damn ugly, my opinion. But it was huge and it denoted some kind of relation. And they said, oh, what do we do with it? Put it in, we don't, leave it here. Are they coming back to get it, to retrieve it? And then Laocoon comes steering down the citadel, and from far away he cries, "Citizens, are you all stark mad? Do you really believe our foes are gone? Do you imagine any Greek gift is guileless?" He said, "Listen, do you know? Have you ever heard of Ulysses? Is that your idea of him?" He was kind of saying, do you know who are the people who left this piece of junk here at our beach? But then this kind of argument, be careful, this might be some kind of trick, did not prevail. It came to the point when Laocoon stabbed the side of the horse, broke it, to find an empty compartment in the horse. And but that wasn't enough to appease him. And despite not finding any man, they didn't break the other section of the horse where the army was. And then Aeneas says, if our own will had not been so contrary, Laocoon would have made us rip open that cache of Greek troops. So there was another cache where the troops were hidden. So something must have made Trojans become sloppy toward the risks of taking that horse into the citadel. Yet, the signs of danger were felt long ahead. They would ask, is the object religious, or is it some engine of war? They thought about these two possibilities. They just didn't think that the thing was harboring a small army. So they were pushing the horse into the citadel, and they were pushing the horse in suspicious of something. They said, let us bring the horse to Minerva's shrine. Minerva is Athens, the Roman form for Athens. And they say, bring the horse to Minerva's shrine. Pray for her goodwill. So they were putting the horse in, but then they were also not that easy about it. They were somewhat suspicious of something. And every now and then there's something else that still shows more danger, and their recklessness, the sloppiness they showed about taking care of what could represent a real menace to them. Because every now and then you would hear the accoutrements of the soldiers, their shields, their swords, their armors. Every now and then they would clang. They would make a little noise because it was filled with live men and athletic men and strong warriors. So every now and then you'd hear some metal noise, clank, clonk, clank. And every time these accoutrements change, and it's barely, yet we persevered, and with never a thought. We were madly blind. So we realize that at a certain point we notice that we were madly blind. Now what could that be? Anyway, they carried on taking the offering to Minerva's shrine, and the signs repeating themselves. Something is wrong. There's something that is not very right about this. And then finally Laocoon is killed by sea serpents. Then you have a whole story about it. But then finally there is, in the words of Aeneas, there is a deplorable slaughter. The horse is put in front of the shrine. people go and celebrate and feast on what they consider a victory. Despite the words of warning, despite the noises they heard, they just went and feasted, and they considered themselves victorious. They were victors, and they got drunk on wine, and they fell asleep. And then we had a conspirator, someone who was lined up with the Greek, who came and opened the strap, because the strap could only be opened from the outside. It couldn't be opened by the inside. He opened it, and ropes, cords were thrown down, and these wonderful warriors, ferocious warriors, as the text goes, started to come down. And then a slaughter begins. Slaughter begins because they are extremely skilled warriors, and they are hitting drunk opponents. In the words of Aeneas, then he's talking in the name of someone else, there is a huge slaughter watched, and the image is very depressing. They tried throwing some arrows, shooting some arrows at the Greek from the top of the buildings, but it didn't suffice to stop the blow. Then, finally, they run, they flee. And then he says, the Greeks were holding the gates of the city in force. Troy was beyond all hope of aid. I accepted defeat, picked up my father, and made it for the mountains. So that's how that awful evening finishes. It's one evening, one terrible evening. And we have all these signs. So it wasn't just the Trojans found the horse and said, oh, it's beautiful, bring it in. No, they started, is it a trophy? Is it an appeasing offering they're making? Is this religious? Is this a war artifact? And despite several warnings, listen, man, are you sure Ulysses would just leave you here one beautiful gift and say, now we're all friends? Are you forgetting who these guys are? Are you forgetting how cunning the Greeks are? He wasn't being very flattering also. He was talking about the Greeks in a very, very harsh way, that they were furious, that they were ferocious, that they were almost uncivilized. And then the clanging of the artifacts within the horse. And everyone went blind, madly blind, and brought the horse in. And then the question comes, why? Why were they blind? And there comes the point. They were blind because they started to seek for an explanation. They wanted to find a reason for that horse. And that started pushing them crazy. And they did the most reckless thing in the world. They could have left that horse out on the beach, left it a week, until they were sure there was no danger. But they had to put it in because they were under the urge of being hit by prestige. There was something very prestigious about the gift. The Greeks were bowing. They were bowing to their resilience, to the Trojans' resilience. It was something to be taken to the shrine of Minerva. And Minerva is the goddess of knowledge, wisdom, and equanimity. So they brought a dubious object that was left as a gift, reputably as a gift, putatively as a gift, they brought it and they put it in front of the shrine of the goddess of wisdom and knowledge. So they gave to the goddess, they put on the goddess account the responsibility for discriminating what the hell were they doing. Were they bringing in a religious artifact? Were they bringing in a war engine? Were they bringing in an offering of peace? Were they bringing in something that could be dangerous? They were reckless. And that's what Ovid goes through very well, how reckless, precipitated the Trojans were. And they got assassinated, they got cleaned from the face of the earth, at least those. For those of you who have a more inquisitive historical interest, it is always noteworthy the fact that Troy in fact existed. It's not just a literary reference, it existed. And you have the ruins of Troy, and it's in a certain place, and they're the ruins of Troy 7. There were 7 ruins, and it seems that the 7th ruin, they found actual Troy, the place where this story took place. Now, how did this madness of the Trojans express itself? To begin with, they conjectured and they argued and they had a huge discussion about what they should do with that thing when they didn't know what that thing was about. And then the second thing was they disregarded what the object was actually showing and kept to their imaginary explanations. Oh, it's probably this. Oh, it's an offer. Oh, it's that. But what it was, in fact, was a huge contraption of wood, of lumber, which was giving signs of having metal within it. Weaponry. And that wasn't enough to make them wake up in their quest of prestige. So the madness was they did not listen to the body of the Trojan horse, and they tried to get their wisdom from something outside their perception. And that brings us to the point of our context today, 21st century, and we are here. Our body has much of a Trojan horse about it. Want me to show it? Look, we didn't choose it. We didn't build it. It came. 2, it came with no explanation, no reason whatsoever. We were just born. We just primarily realized we were on earth. We had a self-awareness, a self-conscience. 3, what we think doesn't always match what our body shows, just like the Trojan horse. And 4, our bodies can give us signs that maybe our ideas can't. Had the Trojans stuck to the fact, saying, listen, there's metal in there, we better check this thing better. And then they would stop the horse, and then you'd hear the clanging. Hey, there's something alive in there. Had they done that, it wouldn't have been that simple. Maybe the Greeks would have overwhelmed them. Maybe they would have got hurt, but it wouldn't have been the tragedy it was. It would have been certainly something more, less noxious to their lives. So, in our lives, we have a body that has all of this Troy, and then we use it as a religious object or as a war contraption, a war engine. That's with us. We can use it in the way we think we find best, but then the signs our body gives us remain within us. Our organism does not lie. It won't lie to us. We can lie to ourselves. We can say the Trojan horse is this, it is that, there is danger, there is no danger, we can put it here, we can put it there, but the inner the inner nature of the Trojan horse, the inner nature of our organism, which often presents itself to us as an enigma, will prevail. So that's a lesson we have. Start listening to ourselves, because our body, differently to the Trojan horse, as I said, the Trojan horse bears some parallels with our life, but it is still something different. Paying attention to yourself, listening to yourself, listening to your body, to your organism, not just facing disease, but sometimes facing exhaustion, sometimes facing disagreeableness, bad moments in our life. It is extremely important to have an eye on ourselves. We might be emitting danger signs, we might be emitting threats that we are not reading. So take care of yourself, listen to yourself, befriend your own experience in the present moment, here and now. If you're interested in realizing what I mean by the differences between body and organism, which is the distinction that can be very, very, very interesting for us who deal with our own subjective matters, those of us who meditate. If you wish to understand a little better the discrimination between these two concepts, these two ideas, then you can find that in my book, which is not in English, it's in Portuguese, but those of you who have experience with Portuguese might be able to get some profit out of it. And I intend to briefly put it in English. It's my plan to do that, but not just right now. So if you wish to understand a little more about that, please do check on my book. The description of the links where you can purchase the book is down here, down below. You can get yourself further information. Thank you very much. See you soon in the next. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your existence. Bye-bye.